We have a lot to get through in this video, so I'm not going to muck about. Whether you're brand new to the F1 franchise, or just looking for a leg up on the competition, here are our tips and tricks for maximising your experience on F1 25.
Before diving deep into the heart of a Grand Prix, we want to get the game looking and running right. For console players, it's relatively simple. Just head to the graphics settings and choose whether to prioritise performance or quality. If you have a 60Hz TV or monitor, I recommend choosing the quality preset, as it should give you 60 frames per second, whilst looking the business with the likes of ray tracing enabled. Performance mode will deliver extra frames per second at the cost of some finer details, so if your screen supports 120Hz or more, we recommend this for a smoother driving experience. And if you're lucky enough to be playing on a PS5 Pro and you have an 8K monitor, you might well see a third option here, resolution, which will elevate things even further. On PC, things are much more customizable, and it's very much hardware spec dependent. There are some cool new visual features such as path tracing, which is, in simple terms, an enhanced, more complex equivalent to ray tracing. It's also incredibly resource intensive, and with racing games it's imperative that you avoid a stuttering driving experience. As a sim racer, I would always recommend prioritising a consistent frame rate over slightly prettier visuals, and the best way to ensure this is with a benchmark test. Aim for an average of 60 frames per second as a minimum, or higher if you have a higher hertz monitor. And if you aren't reaching that, try turning down your graphics preset. One final tip for those using an NVIDIA graphics card, turn the NVIDIA reflex setting at the bottom to on plus boost, which will minimise any input lag. A quick note for VR players too, for the best compromise in terms of performance and looks in VR, set most of F1 25's graphics settings to low, especially shadows and mirrors, except for texture streaming. This ensures reasonably realistic details with the higher texture settings, as well as smooth frame rates, with the game performing much better in VR than F1 24. Another tip for best performance is to reduce the scale factor. F1 25 overrides SteamVR's overall VR resolution setting, so if you're experiencing graphical issues, this is a quick way to reduce the stress on your system. And finally, don't forget to map a button to reset your VR view. You now have optimal looks and performance, so why not optimise your view out on circuit? Each individual camera angle can be tweaked to suit personal preference and increase visibility. Head to the camera customization menu, where you can centre the offset T-cam for instance for an esports style POV, or adjust the immersive cockpit camera to make it a little more user-friendly. Increase the height, tweak the angle, turn off camera shake, movement and look to apex, and finally, your halo column. Now you have F1 driver levels of immersion without the compromises. If you also feel like the HUD layout could be improved, this can be fully customised via on-screen settings and OSD customization. I personally don't mind the default layout, but I do like to raise the central cluster to be on the halo. It's entirely up to you, but if it goes wrong, you can always reset to default. And one last important suggestion, turn on your virtual rear view mirror. Trust me, just do it.
So it's about time we actually started driving, but if you're finding this video useful so far, please do consider leaving us a like and subscribing to the TraxionGG channel so that you can watch more guides like this in the future. Now, if this is your first time playing a racing game of any kind, I'd highly recommend you go and check out our Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Sim Racing, because we go through a lot of the fundamentals and basics of driving in there. But the basic things here are Formula 1 cars have a lot of downforce. That means that they have a lot of grip. You can corner very, very quickly comparative to, say, GT cars, or especially the likes of road cars. Now, in simple terms, it just means that you can attack the corners, carry a lot of speed into them, but the focus is not actually going to be on your corner entry, it's mainly going to be on your corner exit. Don't go too aggressively. Even though they've got a lot of downforce, it's not like they stick to the road like glue. Yes, through the high-speed stuff, they will have lots of grip and you can really hang on, but through some of the slower corners, get your slowing down done comfortably before the corner so that you can power out of it and really focus on your exit speed. Now, in general, F1 25 requires a pretty smooth driving style, and that applies to all aspects of driving, whether it be accelerating, braking, or steering. Now, obviously, it's still going to bite you sometimes, and you're still going to need to apply a bit of steering lock and correct oversteer, but if you can continue to have a smooth flowing style with smooth, slow movements, you're going to basically be in better shape. So through these fast corners like Cops, if you can just turn the wheel once, you don't need to use a lot of rotation either. The cars are incredibly darty. You don't need a lot of steering rotation at all, especially in the fast corners, to actually get around safely. Just do small sweeping motions, nothing too crazy to unbalance the car, and you should be able to find yourself carrying a lot of speed through the corners. As I said, the same thing applies to pedals as well. So when you're braking, try and be smooth with your inputs, but especially on acceleration out of a corner. Try and ease your way onto the accelerator, or the trigger if you're using a controller, of course. And ultimately it will lead to better exits, which will give you more speed down the straights and faster lap times. Also, driving smoothly has other benefits. Not only are you faster, more consistent, but also you'll keep your tyres in better condition as well. Another key thing is to use as much of the track as you physically can. Again, we've actually got a beginner's guide video specifically on finding the perfect racing line, so I recommend checking that out. And you do want to watch out for curbs in F1 25 as well. If they're flat curbs, you can use them, but generally speaking, if you have a slightly higher curb, you can bottom out on them, and that can basically take away any steering that you're able to put into the car. So just be careful for bottoming out on the bigger curbs.
Now, the likelihood is, if you're a relatively new player or a casual player using a controller, you're going to want to use some of the available driving assists. Traction control will stop you spinning as easily when you get back on the accelerator out of a corner, whilst the ABS assist will stop you locking up your wheels under heavy braking. Turning these off will present a more realistic challenge, but it can take time and practice to master, so build your way up to it. And remember, especially controller players, a trigger isn't going to give you as much precision or control as a pedal, so don't worry if you need to use a bit of traction control to keep you on the road, for instance. I would, however, recommend turning off the braking and steering assists as early as you feel comfortable. It's a bit like bumpers at the bowling alley. You're probably going to enjoy it more if you're doing it yourself.
Now in terms of wheel and feedback settings, if you're playing on a controller, you don't really have to worry about it too much. We found the default settings felt pretty good. Obviously you can just tweak it a little bit and work out what your personal preference is. It's different when it comes to wheelbases though. There are a few things you want to think about. So first of all, we want to get our rotation settings right. So if we go to controller, vibration and force feedback, find the active profile and head to vibration and force feedback settings, maximum wheel rotation. Now you want the wheel rotation of the wheel you're using to actually match the rotation number in game. The default is 400, so if you leave it on 400 in game, then make sure that your profile software is set to 400 degrees of max rotation or automatic. However, we also recommend trying out 360 degrees of maximum wheel rotation, which is what I've got here, and I've also set it to 360 in my software. Now in terms of the other force feedback settings, it is of course down to two things: personal preference and what wheelbase you're using, and also within that, what wheelbase settings you have in your independent profiler. So I can't really give you an answer for that. You're gonna have to work that out for yourself. What I would say is I like to turn down the wheel damper setting to just give myself a little bit more of a raw feeling through the force feedback. Now, I'm actually using the Moza R12 V2 wheelbase for this video, and for F1 25, we have a settings guide on the TraxionGG website. And in fact, this video is actually sponsored by Moza Racing.
When you are side by side with a virtual Oscar Piastri, it helps to use sim racing equipment you can rely on, and that's where today's video sponsor, Moza Racing, could help out. Its range includes, for PC, the FSR2 Formula-style wheel, the powerful R12 V2 wheelbase, and the innovative M-Booster active pedal with force feedback. There's also a large range of additional steering wheel add-ons, shifters, and handbrakes, creating a vibrant sim racing ecosystem. Visit Moza Racing's website by hitting the link in the description. Let's look at some tips you can utilise in a racing scenario. A good race start will always set you off on the right foot. Don't let your revs go too high, and when you release the clutch, quickly shift to second and modulate the throttle to avoid excessive wheel spin. After the opening laps, DRS becomes available, a system which opens the rear wing and gives you more straight line speed when you are close to the car in front. Make sure you remember to press it when you can, and to avoid worrying about it, just turn your DRS assist on and it will happen automatically. It's worth knowing the rules of DRS as well and using this to your advantage. You only get it if you're within 1 second of the car in front at a specific detection point on the circuit. So if you're tactical, you can delay your overtake until after the detection point to make sure you don't get repassed immediately. Another important acronym is ERS, your Energy Recovery System, which can give you a temporary power increase and can be managed manually if you choose to do so via the Assists menu. Although it's the same as last year's game, the HUD itself looks a bit different, so check out the detailed guide on our website if you're unsure. Turning your ERS assist off will give you a competitive advantage if you know how to use it wisely. Try to save your battery life for key moments such as an attempted overtake or when defending a position, and use it tactically. For instance, trying to get within 1 second of the car in front to get yourself DRS. Also, avoid leaving your battery at 100% for extended periods of time, as you could easily be using that extra power and recharging it without any time loss, instead of just sitting on it. And make sure you have a button assigned for overtake mode, to ensure you're ready when it's needed. It's certainly worth playing around with your button assignments in general, depending on which tools you adjust more often, whether it be ERS, pit stop management, or even your brake bias position. Brake bias is a useful tool if you're struggling with handling during a stint and want to change the balance. Decreasing the front bias can give you more rotation into a corner, whilst a higher number should give you more stability and potential braking performance, but with a higher risk of locking up. And if you've completely run out of buttons on your wheeler controller, there is always the voice-activated engineer. Just set up your microphone, ask him for certain information, and he will give it to you. Or mishear you and come back with total nonsense, but still.
And through goes Hamilton!
Affirmative, medium tyres at the next stop.
If rain is on the horizon or the track is drying, your engineer comes in very handy as he can provide a weather forecast and will advise you on the optimal crossover point when you should change your tyre compound. One thing I've found so far is that the intermediate tyres are very strong, so changing from wets to inters slightly early may put you in good stead. Do you have any other racing tips of your own? Let us know in the comments below.
Now, of course, just like anything in life, if you really want to get good at something, you've got to put the time in, you've got to put in the practice. And what I would say is even just the first 5 laps of any given racetrack is going to make a huge difference to your performance. And a good way of actually completing those first laps is through time trial mode, which can be found within the F1 World section of the game. Pretty much everything can be found within F1 World for some reason. It's a bit confusing. We should probably have that as a tip of its own. There are a number of reasons why you would jump on time trial mode. I think the most important ones are the fact that you can actually load up the ghost of an esports driver so you can see what they're doing, you can see their telemetry, try and follow their lines. But there's one thing that I think is potentially even more important to your own performance. If you return to your garage and select session info, you can see the global leaderboard, and the drivers right at the top who have the fastest lap times, you can actually load their setups. And this basically just means that you will have the setup that they use to set that lap time. A couple of things to bear in mind though, these setups will be designed probably for hot lapping, so they may not be the best over a longer stint, but they will give you an idea of how you can potentially make your car go faster. Another small warning in fact, not only may they just be hot lapping setups, they will probably be quite tricky to drive as well because they're designed to be faster. So if you're on a controller, you may want to be a little bit cautious with going for a high level esports setup. There is an alternative option as well if you're on PC. You can actually load up the Steam Workshop and download a setup from there. And a lot of setups on there have been designed for things like career mode playthroughs. And if you find a trustworthy profile with good setups that's well rated, then job's a good one. Oh, and one other tip for when you're playing time trial mode, if you want to turn off that weird telemetry line and also the ghost car, just hit escape, and it's not going to be in your normal settings for turning off the dynamic racing line, it's going to be within time trial settings. You can turn off your ghost, personal telemetry mode, rival ghost, all of that. And then boom, we have a clean racetrack.
Whilst most of F125 remains similar to the previous iterations, there are some updated game modes and new features which are worth exploring. One area that hasn't changed much is the often scorned F1 World. In here you will find all sorts of regular game modes baked into the F1 World experience. We did a full guide on how this worked back in F123, and as it's barely changed since, I'll put a link to that video in the description. Breaking Point also returns as per its 2-year cadence, but my only real tip here is to pick a challenging difficulty level to make cutscenes feel more accurate and immersive. You can always tweak it later if a certain scenario is too challenging to complete. The biggest game mode changes come in the shape of a refurbished My Team mode. How you upgrade your facilities will drastically influence your development, but one specific tip we have is to do the dual development upgrade early, allowing you to produce each car upgrade part for both cars and not just one. To do so, you must first complete the Phase 1 facility improvement, called Improved Comms Development, and enhance your engineering department past the Phase 1 level by buying other improvements too. Then, in Phase 2, the ability to buy dual development becomes available. It will also help speed up your car's development by being able to research and develop more than one part at a time. Unlock this ability by purchasing the engineering department's research and development expansion improvements. You must purchase these improvements for each of the 4 main car development areas: aerodynamics, chassis, powertrain, and durability, and across multiple levels. Each subsequent one unlocks once you've purchased each level. There are 3 levels for research and 4 for development, and you need to hit Phase 3 for the overall facility to unlock the ability to develop 4 parts simultaneously. Once completed, however, you will nearly always be creating car upgrades, helping improve your relative pace. Also new is Team Owner Training, which will give your team various perks and bonuses. And with all of the R&D and facility upgrades sapping your attention, this can be easily overlooked. Head to Owner Training within your Team Owner tab. Spend any available training points as and when you get them, and don't forget to schedule the training via the activities menu. One final tip on this: if you want to speed up progression towards the end of a season, you can actually simulate full sessions, changing the feel of the game to be more management focused rather than the driving itself. you can always start driving again later on.
Now, as much as we've covered a lot of ground in this video, there are of course plenty more tips and tricks available. So I want to hear from you. What are your best F125 tips and tricks from your experience? Let us know down in the comments below, regardless of your experience level. Do also remember that we have a whole range of guides and more detailed and specific guides for specific aspects of F125 available on the Traxion.gg website. So head over there for those. Big thank you as well to Moza Racing, of course, for sponsoring this video. You can find out more about their range of sim racing products via the link in the description below. And finally, a big thank you to you all for watching. Hopefully you found it useful and enjoyable. Until I see you next time, enjoy your F125 journey and have a great day.